is a live video. I don't like starting like right half hour just because it takes some people hot minute, I guess. So while we're waiting, if you guys can put in the comments where you're viewing from, I always like to see that. That's always kind of fun for me. We've got viewers from literally all over the world, and it's just kind of fun to see them. Tonight's moderator, by the way, is my daughter-in-law, Annalise Peterson, that you will
Hello.
right here, and she's going to be reading any comments or questions that come in, and also where everybody's joining from.
Well, Jenny, we've got a good start. Cliff says, guess.
Cliff is in Santa. Cliff, you're so funny. You guys, Cliff is a very dear friend of mine from high school. We were in high school band together and both played trumpet, and we've been lifelong dear friends. And I love that every week. Thank you, Cliff. Nobody else lives anywhere. Who else do we have?
Let's see. Looks like we've got Cliff here. We've got Sue. We've got Joseph Noland, Susan Ferrer. Sorry if I butcher anyone's name. We've got Kathy Boyd from Vermont in the call today. Kim Richardson, Karen Hinden. Got a great group already.
Right. Well, how about,
Go
oh,
ahead.
I probably knew that, Kathy, but I kind of tracking facts. So yeah. Excuse me there. Okay, Annalise, I think we are going to get into it here.
It's good.
Probably most of you have seen, what we post on back about talk. Know what the topic is: self-care and what the is between. They are not really important. We are talking about overall conversation is about the step I work at. So it's really good to know the difference in between them. But as what, Annalise, something is uh,
Uh-oh, what was that, Jenny?
I'm hearing a weird sound. Is that from your end?
I don't think so, but I'll mute myself just in case.
Really weird. Okay. Huh. Well, if any of you are hearing it, it sounded like a train was going by. So I don't know what was going on. Maybe it was just exterior noise. But anyway, oh, Annalise, you muted yourself, and that took care of it. So I don't know, something was going on your end. It's no biggie, no biggie. Okay, so as as I was preparing for this episode this week, I started paying a little bit more attention. And really, I've always paid attention to this, but I was paying even more attention this past week about how we talk about self care. And it's not just us, individually, but it's how in our society we talk about self care, how in our world we talk about self care. If you listen to the messaging around it, it often sounds like something that's indulgent, like a glass of wine or lit candles, a nice warm bubble bath, face mask, and massage. Those are all great. I love all of those. They're lovely. But often those are not actually self care, those are self soothing. And I want to start out by saying very strongly that there is nothing wrong with self soothing, that in fact, often that's exactly what we need to do. Um, but if we find that we're only self soothing, then we might be missing deeper ways to take care of the life that we're trying to create in terms of overall health and wellness. So that's why I wanted to talk about this topic tonight is what are the differences between self care and self soothing? How do we know when we need one as opposed to the other? How do we know when we need to use one and then the other? Um, and why do we get them confused in the first place? It shouldn't be rocket science, and it really isn't. It isn't. So we're going to break all that down tonight. So what I want to do right off the bat is talk about the actual definitions. And if you Google this, you're going to find variations on a theme of this, but this is basically an accepted definition of each one of them. So we're going to start with self-care. This is your foundation. This is a proactive kind of long-term strategy that helps you create a life that is full of habits, routines, um, building your lifestyle so that it complements your overall health and well-being, builds up your your resiliency, and your capacity for handling things. It's just the foundation of your lifestyle and your life. Um, but the big thing is that self-care creates a life that you don't want to constantly escape from. That's the big takeaway with this. If you feel like you are self-soothing so much that you're constantly having to escape your life, then that's a little bit of an indicator that there's something more to be curious about there. So, some good examples of self-care for basically everybody is adequate sleep, healthy boundaries, physical therapy, if that applies to you, physical exercise applies to everybody in one way or another, nutritious food, therapy as in like actual like talk therapy or variations of that, regular doctor's appointments or whoever your healthcare team is, um, close relationships where you have those connections, and you have basically have healthy conversations and communication, and then necessary treatments for illness or chronic conditions. Those are all things that we would consider to be health or self care. Now, self soothing, on the other hand, is related, but it is different. This is a little bit of a band-aid, and by band-aid, I don't mean that in a disparaging way because we all sometimes what you absolutely need is a band-aid. Um, but it's tends to be a little bit more of a reactive short-term strategy to provide immediate emotional relief, like when you're stressed, overwhelmed, feeling slightly traumatized, things like that. So it can help you survive a feeling, but it's different from self-care. And some of them can actually, if you overdo it or do it to excess, they can actually be harmful to you. So I'm going to read a list of some very common self-soothing activities that most of us do in one way or another, and it's going to be pretty obvious to you which ones are the ones that you're going to be like, "Ugh, if I did that one too much, that wouldn't be very good." I mean, anything in excess probably isn't great, but there are some of these that would be kind of bad. So, like a hot bath, Epsom salt bath, bubble bath, a glass of wine, massage, deep breathing, taking a nap, watching TV, meditating, comfort food. We all like comfort food. A cozy weighted blanket. If you've never tried one of those are amazing. Visualization, hot tea or some other hot drink, scrolling on your phone. So you can probably tell already that there's several in there that would probably not be healthy if you did them to excess, like scrolling on your phone, or maybe binge drinking, or compulsive eating, retail therapy, stuff like that. You want to be really careful about that. And of course, I am not a therapist, but I do feel compelled to say that if you feel like you're doing things like compulsive eating, binge drinking, retail therapy, things like that, and it's getting in the way of your life and the quality of your life, and that's something you might want to get more curious about and maybe seek some help for. That's obviously above, what I do here with you guys, but just wanted to point that out to you. So, I have 4 points that I wanted to share with you guys, but before I do that, I wanna give you a little bit of a real life example of how self-soothing and self-care operate in my life, and a really good example is every month I drive from Bastrop, where I live, into Austin for my monthly infusion at oncology, and it's an all afternoon kinda thing. I'm there for usually 3, 4 hours. They have to do full labs. I meet with several different people, meet with my oncologist, then I go into the infusion room and where I get a bone strengthening infusions because I take oral chemo at home and it's not really a chemo, but we'll call it that for the sake of argument. I'll get into that another time. It acts like a chemo, it's just more targeted. And so the infusion that I get at oncology every month it's a bone strengthening infusion because the breast cancer migrated to various different bones in my body. So if I don't take this infusion and I fall, I could break bones very, very easily. So we don't want that to happen. So that's what helps me. So I know it helps me. I know it's obviously self care, but it's very unpleasant. It's not really fun to go. I like all the people there, they make it as pleasant as possible. Um, but it can be painful, it can be uncomfortable. They often don't find a vein in my arm. They got to poke around and try it a million different times. It's just never fun. You see people there that are really, really sick, and it's very sad sometimes. I try to uh, bring the best balance kind of view that I can bring to that situation when I go, because I think it's important for me to look at it that way, as though, this is something that is helping me. But what I realized was a few months back,
Yeah.
it's probably last summer. I realized when I was going in, because keep in mind it's a 2-hour round trip. So I started to tell myself, I should really make this trip count. So I don't have to come into Austin again to do these errands that I've had on my list. So I should run errands after I have my infusion, mind you. That's what I'm telling myself. And I should go run errands, and I should go do this and that, just to make sure I'm being productive and efficient with my time. And I tell myself all these crazy things. And thankfully, you guys will all be glad to know that I came to my senses and I realized my body was telling me that is not what I need right then. I need to go home. I drive straight home, and I usually listen to some really meditative music when I'm on the drive home. And um, when I get home, I take a nap every time. I take a nap, get nice and cozy, and I've already planned a nice dinner. It's going to be a nutritious dinner, but it's also going to be comforting. And then Brett and I usually watch something on TV. So I have to listen to my body to know what it is I need in that moment. Do I need discipline and habits and efficiency? No, I don't. I need soothing. I need relaxation. I need to be kind of cozied up, and I need to feel good after an unpleasant experience that I have to do. So the point of this is that we listen. You have to learn how to listen to your body and learn how to listen to the exterior cues and internal cues that tell you, this is what I need right now. I need this and not that, or I need this before I do that. So that is just a real life example of how that works in my life. And I'm sure that you guys have some examples of that as well. And you can shoot those in the comments and we can read them out at the end, or if you have questions. Um, okay. So, first point I wanted to talk about was, how do you tell in the moment that what you're doing or the choice that you're making is self-soothing or self-care? And one of the distinctions is comfort versus discomfort. So usually the things that we think about that are self-soothing, remember that list I talked about, the baths, the candles, the nap, watching something on TV. We associate those with feeling very pleasant, with feeling good, with feeling relaxed and cared for. Whereas on the other hand, self-care often requires some effort on your part, often is uncomfortable, often can be painful. You don't want to do it. It can be very unpleasant. Like when I go in for for my infusions, or when I go into, tomorrow morning I've got to go in for PT. Is it fun? No, it's not fun. I don't like going into PT, but it helps my back and it helps to strengthen my back so that I can do the things that I want to do. Self-care, right? So, um, so if you're wondering, is this thing a self-care? Is it a soothing? That's one question to ask yourself. Is this a pleasant thing that I'm doing to relieve something in the moment, or is it something that is going to care for me long term, that future me will thank me for? So that's one way to make that distinction. And sometimes you need to do those self-soothing things before you can do one of the self-care things, because like we just said, self-care can sometimes be unpleasant. So you might need to do something to calm and relax yourself beforehand before you go do that other thing. Okay, second thing is, that I actually just alluded to is soothe and then solve. Sometimes you need to do the soothing thing before you can solve the problem. Do the thing that you know you need to do, or do the self-care activity. Um, that could be, meditating before you go in for a procedure. It could be taking a walk around the block really quickly to get out some of the jittery stuff if you've got a quick procedure or an appointment that you're nervous about. It could be picking up the phone and talking to a friend to kind of calm your nerves before you have a hard conversation, anything like that. So, um, it my point is it's not always necessary to choose or to say, "Oh, I can't do that because that's self-soothing and not self-care." Sometimes you need to do the self-soothing thing first, and then that allows you to have that presence of mind and that a little bit of that extra relaxation so you can go on and do your other things. So one thing that you can do to ask yourself is, do I need to feel something very quickly before I can do something else? Do I need to feel relaxed before I can do that thing? Do I need to feel more calm before I can go do this thing? And then if the answer is yes, then put a boundary around it. Don't say, well, I need to, self soothe before I go for my appointment. So I'm going to binge watch Netflix for 6 hours before I go in. My recommendation would be to put a boundary around that self-soothing activity so doesn't become a distraction. So I'm going to watch one episode of something. I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes. I'm going to walk one time around the block, something like that. Then go do the thing. Um, so that leads really well into the next point, which is when soothing becomes avoidance, because it can. And I want to add a caveat here that our country and our world right now is so crazy that I think we kind of need to give ourselves a little bit of grace when it comes to self-soothing activities. We all, I think, need a little bit more self-soothing these days than almost anything. And so I just want you to be aware of what you're doing and what you're choosing. But don't feel bad that you need to self-soothe, because I feel that way too. And I think everybody that's living through this period of time in our country and in our world is feeling similarly. And then those of us that are dealing with complicated health issues on top of that, it makes it more difficult. So don't feel bad about self-soothing and doing it maybe a little bit more than you normally do. Um, that being said, when you do something to excess, it can become a distraction and avoidance, which ultimately is not going to help you at all. And probably in the moment might make you feel a little bit better, but in the long haul, it's probably going to create some other problems for yourself. So, one way to know, like, how do you know if you're using self soothing as a distraction or avoidance? There are several different ways that you can know. Um, One is if you notice that your feelings are getting numbed rather than processed. I'm going to read that one again. If your feelings are just feeling numbed out instead of feeling like, okay, I just processed something and I can now move on, that's an indication that the self soothing activities that you're choosing you might be using them as a distraction and an avoidance. So, um, or if you're procrastinating important decisions or doing something really important, if those things continually get put off and they're being put off so that you can do, increased TV watching or scrolling or something like that, that's a little bit of a red flag is there. I'm going to cop to this. I can start scrolling. I try to not do that on a lot of social media, but I can scroll on Substack for a long time because it seems healthier. It doesn't seem like like it's a bad thing, because it's like good writing and I don't want to miss anything. But, I can do that for an hour, hour and a half. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't check my email. I didn't do any of my other things. So be aware of that. If it's a constant distraction, then you might need to look at that a little bit. Um, Emotional eating and drinking in order to escape. That's never really a good thing. We sometimes do that and we can forgive ourselves, and that's actually not a phrase that I like. We can have grace with ourselves when on the occasion that we do that. We just want to make sure that we're not doing that all the time and that doesn't become our regular, because then you're obviously creating some other issues for yourself. Okay, so the fourth point is what I call the intentionality shift. Some of these activities, whether they're self soothing or self care, can be used for either one. And a good example would be walking. Say you have to have a hard conversation and you're really kind of wigged out about it, and a good option to soothe yourself or to calm yourself down would be to take a brisk walk around the block, and that's just gonna kinda get the jitters out, and then you can go have the conversation. But walking can also be a part of overall self-care because you can do daily walking, every day for your heart health, for, weight management, all that kind of thing, for it to monitor your energy, things like that. Massage can be another one that fits into both categories. Relaxing massage is great, but you probably are like me where you've had a massage that gets really, really deep and it's actually painful. But in the long run, it's going to be good to loosen that stuff up and it needs to happen. But, sometimes it just that deep massage or the raw thing does not feel good. But it is self care because it's going to help you overall. So there are things like that can operate activities like that can operate in either self-soothing or self-care. And the only difference is your intentionality. What intentions are you bringing to that activity when you're doing it? And the reason that's important is because you're trying to get in tune to your body and your heart and your soul that is telling you this is what I need right now. So we want to get really comfortable with talking with ourselves and communicating with our bodies and our hearts so that we know what we need in that moment. And you can say to yourself, like, be really deliberate and intentional about this to say, I have this hard thing to go do. I can't not do it. Like for me, I can't not go have my infusion. I have to do that. I have to go to PT tomorrow. But I'm going to do, this walk right now that's going to help me. And so you're aware that that walk is for the purpose to soothe, whereas my daily walk is for the purpose for overall health and well-being via um, self-care. So it's just really the intentionality that you bring to each thing that you do when you are caring for yourself, whether it's in a micro way or in a macro way. It really does make a difference because it reinforces that ability that we all have to communicate with our own bodies. And I think sometimes we lose that ability to be very in tune to ourselves. We start listening to other people that tell us what we should be doing. We start listening to other people that want to encourage us to be a sloth on the couch for an entire week when that's probably not the best for us. You get all these other voices and noises in your head, and it's really best to um, develop that connection and that relationship to your own body yourself so you know best what you need. You can read those signs and those signals that your body and your heart and your spirit are giving you. And when we learn how to do that better, then we can tend to ourselves and give ourselves what we need. Okay, so let's talk for just a minute about why we get these confused. It's not rocket science. The health and wellness industry often bottles up and sells soothing activities as self-care. Why do they do that? Well, it's easier. It's a lot easier to sell something sexy like candles and bath bombs than it is to sell habits and routine and discipline. That's not very sexy. That's not very fun. That doesn't sound great, even though we know we have to do it. So these things get like the self-soothing things get packaged up in a nice little package, and they're sold as self-care because we all know that we have to care for ourselves, right? That's a given. We know that we have to do that in order to be responsible, human beings with our life. So of course, it would be irresponsible to not buy the bath bomb because that is taking care of ourselves. And this is the road that we go down when we are marketed to in those ways. Now, we kind of know better that we don't have to buy the bath bomb, but in our minds, because it gets confused, we're thinking, I should buy all these things and I should do all these things for self-care. That's not self-care, that's self-soothing, but it is important, but let's not get them confused. Um, Often, as we've already discussed, true self care is not pleasant. It's not something we want to do. So if we don't want to do something, we're not going to talk about it very much, right? We're just going to kind of focus on the things that are fun to do over here and that are relaxing. And so that's why we've kind of lost that muscle for talking about what proper self-care looks like and feels like, because it's not really that fun to do. And so my whole point is let's develop those conversations and those languages of talking in both arenas. They're both necessary, and they play off each other, and they support each other very well. And together they support the life that we want to have and how we want to feel every day. So how this really fits in with people that have a diagnosis maybe similar to mine, or it could be something, other conditions that we've talked about before, like endometriosis, fibromyalgia, ALS, chronic pain, even depression and anxiety, because as we know, those kind of live physically in your body and they can cause a lot of physical issues. We're going to talk about some of that next week, how to handle those physical issues. Um, but when you are dealing with these long term chronic things that are really rough and they're really hard, um, we don't we don't label them as self-care because they're not fun. And I really would like us to learn how to label things a little bit differently, that it because if we label something as bad, or I hate that and it's bad because it hurts me, then we don't want to do it. We don't want to talk about it, and we don't develop ways of talking in a healthy manner about it. Yes, it's not fun. We all know that. There are things that we all have to do in an effort to take care of ourselves and have the kind of life of health and wellness that we want, that we don't want to do, but we need to do it. And so these are just ways of talking about these terms, not confusing them, understanding how they play with each other, how they interact, how they support one another, but then ultimately having the necessary information in front of us so that we can make the best decisions that we can in that moment, so that we're feeding our bodies and our souls and our minds what we need to be feeding them at that moment. Um, so I hope this was helpful to you guys. This is something that I take really seriously, because my whole life, as is many of yours, is I feel like it's more than a part-time job. It's a full-time job, taking care of myself, taking care of my back, taking care of my GI health, making sure I go to all my appointments, doing all the things. And for a long time, I really resisted some of it, and I felt resentful that I even had to do all of these extra things. And now I'm starting to see them as different. These are opportunities that I have to take care of myself in ways that are really going to benefit me, in the long run. So, Annalise, I'm going to turn this over to you. If you have if there are any questions or comments from the Peanut Gallery, anybody, any questions about what we've been talking about tonight or what I've been talking about tonight? I know that there are a number of you that are going through similar um, health situations like I am. And I know in past episodes, we've had people joining that are caretakers for people going through some really rough medical considerations. So these are really important conversations to have.
Yes. No questions so far, but please go ahead. Now is a great time to drop some in the chat. I'll also take this moment to, even though you don't want me to, plug everybody to make sure you're subscribed to Jenny's Dying to Live on Substack. Seems like you've got some repeat listeners here tonight. So thank you all for supporting Jenny. Looks like we got a question here or a comment. My number one most favorite way to unplug is traveling. Would you consider traveling self-care or self-soothing? And that was from Cliff.
Cliff, I also love to travel. Although I've done any traveling, not too much in the last 2 years, just because of my health. But um, So I would consider that sort of both, because I think traveling can you're doing the things while you're traveling that are relaxing and self-soothing, like you're having those good meals. I know because I see your Facebook posts. So you're having those good meals, you're having, a nice glass of wine, and you're seeing beautiful things, spending time with your wife. So I think that that counts as self-soothing. in that moment, but I also think it's self-care because you are breaking out of your routine, which is necessary for all of us, and going to, um, uh, do something different that kinda livens up your world a little bit and maybe even expands your worldview, and I think those things are really important for self-care, and in the list that I read about self-care at the beginning, of this episode,
Mm.
we talked about, creating, uh, those good relationships where you have healthy connections, and I think when you're particularly when you're doing that with somebody you love, like your wife or somebody else, then that absolutely counts. Travel counts as self-care for sure. Absolutely. I look forward to the next time that I can actually travel. Anything else we have going on there, Annalise?
Not yet. I can quickly share something that came to mind while you were talking that I think a lot of times what makes the soothing activities, I have to get that right, so attractive, as you said, is there's also often an almost immediate payoff. You feel great after you take a bath or get a or something like that, but a lot of the self-care activities, going to PT, taking medicine, it can take a really long time to see any sort of benefit. So I think that can just be another challenge, but oftentimes those long-term habits are what leads you to that sustainability, and better health that you were talking about.
I've had, and thanks for sharing that. I've had multiple PT sessions where I've literally gotten sick to my stomach, at PT,
Yeah.
partially
Yeah.
from her treatment side effects, but also because they 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 have to work me a little hard. They have to push me beyond what I think I'm currently capable of, or this back is never going to get strengthened. My core will never get strengthened. Because right now, you guys, I can stand up and do things for about an hour, and then I have to sit because my back just starts to increasingly go like this. Annalise has been around me where it goes like this, and I look like the old lady with the stick on her back by the end of the evening, you know? So, it's not fun while I'm doing it, but I know overall, month after month when I go, week after week, it strengthens my back and I'm getting more stamina and more strength to do the other things that I wanna do. So, it is putting off some gratification, immediate gratification in order to get the things that you want. That's for sure.
Yes, we've had several more people join during the stream. We've got Nexus X here, Veronica, Lyra, Mama Carol, Joanna Milne. So you have a really great group here.
You guys. I know we're kind of towards the end if you joined, but if you just joined, like in the last few minutes, what we've been talking about is the difference between self-care and self-soothing. They are not the same things. They're related, but they have different functions, and it's really important for us to understand what those functions are so we can make the best decision for our overall health and well-being. And don't worry if you tuned in a little bit late and you didn't see all the rest of it. You guys know I'm gonna always post the replay on Substack, and I'll probably do that either tonight or tomorrow morning, before I go to PT. That'll be my self-soothing thing to do. I'll kinda connect with you all before I go to PT at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So, um, and Elise, if there's nothing else there, I really want to thank you guys for taking part of your Wednesday evening to join me and talk about these things. Next week, my plan is to. I had a topic I was going to talk about, and then I've gotten a request from at least three different people to talk about how to what are some of the techniques that I have learned over the years to calm myself in the moment when you're having anxiety? Because we can all have, like, anxiety related to treatment, related to your new diagnosis, related to, um, some pain that you might be having, and I used to have really, really severe anxiety and panic attacks in the early 2000s, and I've learned a few things that have really helped to keep that I would say managed. I don't suffer from that any longer because it's been so long and I know how to deal with it before it gets to that point. So I've had about three different people ask me to be more specific about those types of tips and strategies that I use. So I'm going to go into that next week with you guys. So thank you so much for joining on This episode 3 of Jenny's Dying to Live. Look for the replay tomorrow on, or maybe tonight on Subcast. And until then, I will see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody. Good night. Thanks for joining.